We're going to go to my guest on this issue in just a little while, but let me lay the groundwork for you. A guy called Martin Speake is a top saxophonist. He's quite well known, but he has been a music teacher at the prestigious Trinity Laban Music School for 22 years. Now, Trinity Laban has adopted Black Lives Matter inclusivity policies. I don't know where these organisations have been over the last couple of years, but just to let you know, Trinity Laban, Black Lives Matter is an entirely discredited organisation. So why you're hitching your wagon to that lot, I do not know. But they have BLM inclusivity policies. As such, the teachers were given some kind of questionnaire to go through a few of their views and the issues of the day. Now, one of the issues that Martin Speake and his colleagues were required to opine on was the fact that in the British jazz music scene, players of colour, musicians of colour, black musicians, are underrepresented. Now, that's pretty much nonsense, Martin Speake says. Don't forget, jazz music was invented by black people. It's their music. So it's fairly odd to say maybe black people aren't getting any opportunities in the field of jazz music. But what Martin had the temerity to state was what he saw as the truth, that far from being underrepresented in the field of jazz, black musicians have far more opportunities than many others, you know, for obvious reasons. Anyway, that truth did not fit with the woke orthodoxy. Therefore, you want to keep your job, you've got to pretend, you've got to nail your colours to the lie that they are underrepresented. Because he dared to say the truth, after 22 years, he was cancelled and sacked. Unbelievable. Let's talk to cultural commentator Lois McLatchie-Miller. Hello, Lois.
Hi, Kevin. It's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? Another one of these stories of someone being cancelled just for saying an obvious truth.
Exactly right. And this guy knows what he's talking about. He's a jazz musician. He's very well known. Not only has he lost his job, he used to do a lot of lucrative private lessoning. That doesn't happen anymore. And I believe that his performing career is also in trouble. Now, as I say, let's go back to this. He was asked to sort of give his opinion on the fact that there was systematic racial inequality, I quote, in the British jazz scene. He said, far from that being the truth, if you want to know the truth, it's probably black people get a disproportionately good chance of opportunities in the jazz music scene. Now, that is fairly obvious, isn't it? It is originally black music. Black people invented jazz. But because he dared to say the truth, no, people of colour do just fine in the arena of jazz, he was cancelled and sacked. It's unbelievable.
I think what absolutely kills me about this story is that he was invited to give his opinion. He was sent an email. They were looking for feedback. And so he was kind of laid this trap. He was offered a platform to give his view, and he took that. And before he knows, this email is circulating around and he's cancelled. But I think what your comments were just in the previous section, Kevin, are really pertinent in that this is an old trick. This is an old story. We had a lot of this in 2019 and 2020. Many stories of people losing their jobs. We think of Calvin Robinson and others who had spoken out saying that things weren't institutionally racist, etc., and then being punished for raising this opinion. But a lot of us have moved past that. A lot of industries have moved past that. And we see that politically in America and across Europe, that people are really fed up of this kind of idea that you can't say anything against the woke orthodoxy or else you'll lose your job.
I agree with that, Lois. But and I think it is dying a merciful death in America because Donald Trump will have no truck with this nonsense. The trouble is we got Keir Starmer, and as the case of Martin Speake proves, it's still alive and prospering here in Britain, and that's extremely worrying. If you don't mind, Lois, we're going to remind ourselves of Martin Speake when he spoke to Mike Graham on the Morning Glory breakfast show here on Talk this morning. So this is Martin laying out some of his case.
I shared it with one student, an interesting student who we always chatted about all kinds of things, and I thought that's what you're supposed to do in the academic world with young adults, talk about interesting subjects. You know, you don't have to agree. And he shared it with a half dozen students, and one of those got anxious. I don't like what Martin's saying here, and went into the head of jazz, who was a friend of mine for 30 years, interestingly, and instead of calling me in, let's all talk about it, bypassed me, and the wheels of motion were set. And the students then heard about the email, although I hadn't seen it, and decided to boycott my lessons.
Well, there you have it. Independent action on the part of the aggrieved students. The authorities at the college didn't even talk to him. This is cancel culture in all its lack of glory, isn't it? This is how it happens. People start taking the law into their own hands and basically cancelling people. It's awful.
Yeah, and thank goodness, you know, the good people at the Free Speech Union have taken on this case, and I think people are invited to contribute financially to that on their website, so check that out if you are interested. But I think it also, hearing that story there, exposes a wider problem when it comes to places of learning, universities, colleges. We've known this over the last few years. In fact, the Conservative government, one of the few good things they did in their 14 years is put through legislation to protect free speech on campus. But over the summer, after the election, we heard that is going to be kicked out again. We won't see that legislation come into action to protect the free speech of students. I think that's a real shame, because universities are where we kind of train up the next generation to be able to hear other ideas, hear different opinions that they disagree with, and disagree in a really productive way, and learn how to engage in these important conversations. But as we let these institutions just kind of rot under the weight of woke ideology, under the weight of cancel culture, saying you can't say that, and if you do, you're banished from here, that is going to be shaping what the future culture creators of the next generation that's going to shape their attitudes and keep this kind of nonsense perpetually going into the future. So I think we do need to concentrate a lot on liberating universities, liberating students from this attitude, and making sure that they are once again a place of real learning.
Universities, to some extent, schools and colleges have become sort of centres of gross intolerance. They're intolerant of anybody who thinks that something different to them. In the case of Martin Speake, what this is that the truth that he told, that actually black musicians do very nicely in the world of jazz, as they should do. It's their music, do you know what I mean? But he stated that truth, but that truth does not gel with the woke orthodoxy. Therefore, what Martin and his colleagues and all of us are prepared to do, or what we must do, is to pretend what isn't true is true. So we have to pretend that there's racial prejudice against black people in the world of jazz, because that fits the woke orthodoxy. So in other words, this entire argument, this entire nonsense that has ruined the life and the career of this 22-year strong teacher, music teacher and saxophonist Martin Speake, is all about the fact that he refused to lie. That is ridiculous. We've got to stop this.
It is, and it was a patronising lie as well, wasn't it? Because as far as I understand from this story, he was also pushing back on the idea that you should have diversity quotas coming into his lessons, into his class, having to take this many people from a white background, this many people from a black background. And he said, no, that's ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. How patronising to the people who invented jazz that they should have to qualify for a particular quota. That's obviously nonsense. And anyone who takes half a second to think about it realises that that's racist. exist. That's the other way around. That's inverse racism, saying that they aren't qualified to just get a place on their own merit. So it's, you know, standing up for absolute common sense here has ruined the career of this valued professor, and we can't just keep brushing past these stories. It can't be just, you know, every week we're talking about another person who has become a victim of cancel culture. There has to be harder and firmer action to protect the right of people to be able to speak freely in their place of work.
I'm assuming, I know that the Free Speech Union is paying Martin's legal costs. I'm assuming he's going to try to sue Trinity Laban Music School for wrongful dismissal. I don't see they'll have much of a case. I mean, you know, he just said what he believes to be true, what I think is true. You can't sack people for stating the truth, although in our topsy-turvy, through the Alice in Wonder looking glass world that we now exist, this kind of crap does happen, and it's got to stop. It will stop in America. Let's hope it stops here very soon. Lois, really good to talk to you. Thanks for coming on. Lois McLatchy Miller, their cultural commentator.